Hey, JJ. Jackson, would he be doubtful or unlikely to play?
It's a great color suit.
Oh, thanks, JJ.
I really like that.
Yeah, kind of like camel, kind of.
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks.
Jackson, doubtful. Yeah.
Gotcha. Anything more on him, on how he's doing?
He's getting imaging today.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you see looking back at the tape, kind of with Dalton in that group? And I know you have some evidence of him playing with those guys the previous time when he was starting. But what did you like about that, and what do you feel like is sustainable as you move forward?
Coach once say, if you were to take an NBA team and go play a pickup game and not call plays, the ball is just going to naturally find the best offensive players. And I think when he plays with that group, we don't necessarily have to run a lot of plays for him. The ball's going to find him. You know, AD and Bron and AR, they all trust him. He's really good at creating windows. He's really good at cutting. Obviously, when he does have the ball or when we're running action for him, like he can score that way. But he just really fits in with that group offensively.
Hartenstein is really fit in. It's probably as expected for somebody that's seen him play a lot, JJ. But the dynamic that he brings to them, and then also just the pressure defense that they play at. You haven't seen them yet, but how do you feel like that impacts, and what does that make important for you?
We have to do a good job of taking care of the basketball. We've done that against Minnesota. We did that against Orlando. This team, in the same way, if not better, tries to be disruptive and handsy and physical. Dort in particular, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams. Shea's always up there as well with deflections and steals. So they're trying to turn you over. We have to be physical offensively with our cutting and our screening, and even when we have the basketball in our hands, we have to be physical.
Beyond the obvious of the numbers being effective from D'Angelo against San Antonio, was there anything about his approach or just kind of the way he was able to impact the game that stood out to you since you've been able to look at the film?
I liked his aggressiveness. Him and I had a couple of really good conversations going into that trip. And then again on the golf course on Monday when we got into Phoenix. He's in a good spot, and I think in terms of tactically, got him to run some pick and rolls and get him going to his left hand. He can really operate that way.
JJ, you mentioned after the Spurs win how impressed you were with the teams 1 through 5, Reading, and just how physical they were. How much of that, I guess, can you kind of use as just an example moving forward of like, this is how we have to defend, and this is the level of physicality, attention to detail, awareness, all that stuff?
Yeah. We've done that in stretches. The only other game that we've started with 1 through 5 Reading as our coverage was the Cleveland game, and that didn't turn out too great. So I think anytime you have some success with something, it's good to have reference points throughout a season, showing that you can do it. And even if it's not the primary coverage, being able to go to that during games is important.
When it comes to starting Dalton, is part of that just like leaning into the thing that you guys have been good at in terms, and that's score the basketball, and just kind of plant your flag on one side of the ball and figure out the other. That makes sense.
That conversation was had. I can't say that's the primary reason, but yeah, we had that conversation.
What did you like about the way that group defended? Because it felt like in San Antonio, really active on that side of the ball. Start of the first quarter, start of the third quarter. What can they do minus just the versatility and switching?
Yeah, it's funny because I think you can't have a good defense, or you can't be a good defensive team, and you can't have a good defensive game in the NBA unless you talk, unless you communicate. And ideally you're communicating your coverages. I think when you switch, you're forced to communicate. So I think the biggest thing that I felt during the game and was obvious on tape was just our level of communication was really high. So I like that. And again, that is also a reference point. Hey guys, you've shown me that you can talk on the court. You know, if we're running our normal pick and roll coverage or normal DHO coverage, like we should have that same level of communication.
What have you seen from Max since he rejoined the rotation, or differently from him compared to early in the season before he was taken out the rotation?
I think he's really started to embrace the 4 things that we gave him to do. Just, you know, really simplified it, made it crystal clear, and he's done that. I think defensively that stands out, and it pretty consistent, just his level of physicality, both on the ball and when we do get in our switching groups, he's been really good.
Coach, with the situation of the NBA Cup, like if the Lakers win tonight, it's going to be 5 teams eliminated right away. Do you think your players care enough because they win the last season? Do you think they care enough to know the situation, very complicated situation right now, or they just treat it like a similar, simple game?
I think we want to win this basketball game for all the reasons that this basketball game exists, including keeping our chances alive for the Cup.
Hey, JJ, a big picture thing on LeBron, when it comes to contextualizing his longevity, what are the things that you think are distinguishable about his day-to-day routine that helps explain what contributes to his run?
I think the biggest thing is just competitive stamina, and that's reflected in his routine. Being able to get up every morning and do the same thing over and over. It's not easy. I think anybody who's been a high achiever probably has moments where they feel like they can take a day off or take a rep off or take a week off, whatever it may be. And I know, you know, during the off season, he'll occasionally hop on a $300 million yacht for a week in Ibiza, but or wherever he goes in the Mediterranean. But I think that's, you know, that's what stands out. You don't do this for this long and have the routine you have without just a high level of competitive stamina.
Hey JJ, back when you were podcasting, there was you led an episode with, you know, some complimentary words about Mark Daigneault. I know you had to talk to him before games when you were on broadcast, but since you become a coach, has your relationship with him changed? Like, what's the extent of your relationship with him? Like, can you walk me through that?
Yeah, I've ran into him a couple times. I know I saw him in Chicago in September at the coaches meeting. He was very curt and short with me. Didn't want to give me any advice. No, Mark's great. I think he still owes me a beer from that episode. So he still owes me a beer.
Thanks, Coach.
This is Music.
JJ, you had mentioned in in San Antonio about the kind of the end of quarter execution. I think in the first 3 quarters it was 14-1 in the final 3 minutes. Are you seeing anything these last couple of games, or is it just about the late quarter execution that's been consistent and not working as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just in a tough spot sometimes in terms of just reviewing stuff, going over stuff, showing stuff pregame. They're going to trap at the end of quarter to get the ball back. We want the last shot. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sometimes you're in a tough spot, and you just got to keep doing it, and we'll get it. We'll learn from it. Got
it. Is there a larger takeaway from this specific game where, obviously you're in it, you come back and it late in the fourth?
I think the biggest takeaway is we have a lot to build on defensively over the last 2 games. That was as connected as our group has been on that end of the floor since the first game of the season. Just, really, really outstanding job with a lot of the stuff we talked about. Don't know the exact total, but there were, half dozen to a dozen plays that just shot us in the foot, even before the late game stuff. We played well enough and hard enough to win against the best team in the West. So there's definitely good stuff.
JJ, did Max think there was a foul to give?
I'm not sure. He looked at me and I gave him the coverage call. And I guess he interpreted that as foul, but obviously, I was yelling the coverage call.
What kind of information did you get on Austin at halftime? What was your vantage point on that play, and then kind of how did you think he moved out there after a pretty hard fall?
Vantage point on the play was an airborne player, and he made a play on the ball, and that's why I stopped dunking very early in my life. Clear that he couldn't go in the first half. He's tough as nails, and I thought he moved fine. It wasn't really in the flow of the game because of that and not getting to start the second half. So, but I thought he'll be in some pain tomorrow, and we'll just have to kind of assess going forward.
JJ, on the defensive side, it felt like AD was just everywhere, 4 blocks, switching on to Shea, switching on to their perimeter guys. What did you see from him in terms of his engagement activity? It felt like even more so than the average game.
Yeah. Guarded a lot of isolations. Thought he was fantastic in isolation. You're inevitably, especially against a team with 2 superstars and guys that redrive, closeouts and redrive shifts, you're inevitably going to get beat. And I thought his awareness and just intent to be that sort of backline anchor that we've talked about was great tonight. They're a really good defensive team. There were a lot of stuff that we tried to run, and we got to be better. Me, coaches, all that stuff. And just finding him more scoring opportunities against this team in particular. They did a really good job with him.
JJ, kind of to that point, you mentioned that you guys as coaches can set him up more. He only finished, I think, with 10 field goal attempts. I think maybe seasonal outside of, I think, that one game that he had to leave early. What specifically were you seeing from the Thunder that kind of led to that?
Clearly a lot of attention to detail on the game plan around him, to be honest with you. Just in terms of a lot of the similar actions we run, not necessarily, we have a bunch of different ways to get him the ball. They're not necessarily one play, and they had prepared well. And then, when he was able to get the ball in his normal spots, just the amount of bodies. But again, the second straight game that a team has done that, and he's been a willing passer. Again, 7 assists. He didn't score the ball like he normally scores the ball, but he had an outstanding game.
I've asked you about your team's physicality a couple times. it looked like in the first quarter the Thunder were the team that was more physical, was kind of dictating the game, but you guys kind of showed up and answered it and met it. Are you encouraged, similarly to, and it's related to defense, but encouraged with how your team was able to kind of find that part of maybe their DNA?
Yeah, again, there's things you can build on. Another game where we got off to a slow start and we're able to get back into it and get back into it fairly quickly. I thought our group, and by that I mean the players as well, we were prepared for their physicality. We were prepared for Dort and Case and Wallace and Hartenstein. Like, we were prepared for those guys. The group was, and I thought, they did a good job of combating that for the most part.
Thanks, Coach.
Hey, Max, in that final minute, it looked like you were looking in JJ's direction. He said he wasn't quite sure, but did you think he said foul, or did you kind of misinterpret the bonus?
Yeah, it was a misinterpretation on my part, but regardless, I think I knew the time and score of the game, but I didn't realize they were in the bonus, and I should have known because they were in the bonus for the last 3 or 4 minutes. So, yeah, it's a mental error on my part, and I take responsibility for that.
I know you're hard on yourself. Is that one kind of sting for you, and how do you mentally get past that?
Yeah, it definitely hurts. That was the game that's the best team in the West record-wise. So we were right with them, and I think we definitely had a really good opportunity to win the game. And I'm not going to say that my mistake cost us the entire game, but it was definitely probably the biggest one of the game. So, it is what it is. I got to learn from it. So,
Max, where do you feel like you guys are at overall now, coming off of that trip? You hang with OKC, have a chance to win the game. Mm-hmm. Where do you feel like you guys have to keep buttoning down and kind of move forward from this?
I mean, to be honest, I think we're in a solid spot. I think tonight was a good game for us. I know OKC is the best team in the West record-wise. They're super physical, and I think we honestly did a good job defensively making them work for every basket they scored. So I think we're in a good spot, to be honest. I think we just gotta, continue to stay with each other and grow upon this loss. I gotta learn from it. So, I don't think we're worrying right now.
Max, this is, in addition to the San Antonio game, the second consecutive game where it seems like opponents are really keen in on showing bodies towards AD, whether it's in posts, ISOs, what have you. Mm-hmm. How do you think the team has responded, I guess, to those defensive strategies?
I think we're doing a good job of, honestly, they're all, AD and Braun are great passers. I think we're doing a good job of when we get those opportunities. Rui does it a lot. He kind of just cuts right to the middle of the lane, gets that little jumper. Dalton's been shooting it well on the backside. So I think, honestly, we're doing a decent job. Obviously, AD and Braun are really, really good players. They're going to attract a lot of attention. So that's on us, as everybody else, to cut, to find the open space and knock down those shots.
Max, I think Mike had a stat when you were talking to JJ that OKC was like 13-1 at the end of the first, second, and third quarters. As quarters wear on, is that a test as much as anything on like mental kind of consistency and toughness? And
What do you mean 13 as in like
13 points to 1?
I see.
Was that in mine?
You had the last 3 minutes of the first 3 quarters.
Okay, the 13-1.
Yeah, is that just kind of like, is there maybe a natural kind of like let your guard up a little bit in those moments after?
Yeah.
And how do you guys kind of correct it?
No, honestly, I think that's moments of heightened awareness for us, and we need to do a better job as a team. I think I get caught in a few situations like that, and I think at the end of the third quarter, I think it was Aaron Wiggins had the tough little floater in the paint. I have the blunder at the end of the game. So, I think that's just, I don't know, mental, I guess. You just got to be more locked in. You got to be, better in those moments. I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
Max, in what areas have you seen the team grow defensively these last couple of games?
Mm-hmm.
JJ and AD have talked about communication.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys were switching a lot in the San Antonio game tonight as well. So I guess what have been some of the trends over these past couple performances?
Communication's one for sure. Like you said, we were going to switching in the last 2 games, and I think it's worked for the most part. I think for the first 3 quarters, at least, were pretty low-scoring quarters for both teams. So I think defensively for us, that's a good sign. OKC, I have the number 1 defense in the league, but they're top 10 or 15 in offense too. They got a lot of good players over there. So I think defensively, honestly, we've taken steps in the right direction. I'm not sure what our transition points were tonight. That's obviously an area of emphasis for us. But I think our half-court defense is really good. I think we did a good job kind of just showing Shea and Jalen Williams and all their ISO guys' bodies. So I think we're taking steps in the right direction defensively.
Max, in terms of your own play, it seems like in the past couple games, San Antonio, Phoenix, Denver, Orlando, while the outcome may not have been, in some of those games what you guys would have wanted, your shot's kind of been there, as opposed to maybe earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of what do you attribute that to? Is that kind of like, something you're just kind of reading what the defense is giving you, or is it something a little bit more schematic? Or
Nah, I mean, to be honest, I'm just trying to stay aggressive, and I have full confidence in my shot. I work, hard enough every single day to have belief in that, and I wasn't really worried that I got off to a slow start, and it's going to come eventually. And I think, right now I'm in a pretty good groove and a pretty good rhythm, so I'm going to try to continue that. But for me, it's just confidence. I think that's what it is mentally. I think I've gotten really good in that area, so I'm just going to try to continue that.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, guys.